I'll call to order the City Council work session for the City of East Grand Forks for May 9th, 2023. Please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander, Council President Mark Olstead.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riopel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Ben Pukshavinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Brian Larson.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Here.
That's term quorum. Number 1, discussion on pedal pub proposal. Is Justin?
Justin's on his way, but I'm Tyler Piper. Do you guys want me to stand, or?
If you want to just come up and sit there and make sure the mic's on, Tim, for him.
This one's on, good to go? Okay. Okay. Do you guys want me just to get started? And
get
this is my first time. And
Yeah.
okay, so Justin and I have been working with the state of North Dakota and the DDA for the last couple months to get some legislation in North Dakota changed to make a pedal pub legal in the state of North Dakota, which it did. And we went to the city council last night and got everything approved. But to give you guys a quick overview of what the pedal pub is, it's in North Dakota. It was classified as a multi-passenger bike, and it's steered by a pilot who would be an employee of ours, and we would do all the training. There'd be safety protocols, and obviously they wouldn't be allowed to drink or anything. But the rest of the pedal pub is situated around 16 seats. That would be kind of similar to, say, a party bus or a limousine. And they would be allowed to bring their own bring their own beer. So we wouldn't be selling or anything. We wouldn't require any licensure or anything like that. And the goal is to have it run from downtown Grand Forks and include East Grand Forks in it as well. We want basically to, our goal of working with the DDA has been to increase like some tourism, bring some people from outside of town to experience downtown. We would partner with some of the local bars and restaurants too. So a typical tour would be about 90 minutes. And you would make 2 to 3 stops on the way too, and the group would get out and they'd get to go in and have a drink or grab some food quick and then hop back on, and then they would go to the next stop, and we would have a loop going through from East Grand Forks to Grand Forks. So I do have some paperwork too that I think we sent over to Megan regarding like ordinances in Minneapolis, because they have about 8 bikes there as well, and what they did as far as like legalities, anything like that we have to get covered. It's fully insured. We go through, like, it's a franchise deal too, so we go through a lot of training and everything like that. We have a lot of resources as far as proper protocol and everything like that. So we just wanted to make sure it was cleared with you guys, we're doing things the right way. So
Megan, if you want to touch base on what you've gone through so far with them and what our next steps would be.
Yep, absolutely. So, like you said, he did supply an ordinance from the city of Minneapolis, which was included in the packet. Ron, I believe, viewed that. If this is something the council is interested in, we would have to get an ordinance in place to regulate the use before anything could be in place. Alcohol and gambling confirmed, like he had said, they cannot sell any alcohol for people on it, but they could bring their own. And then I did touch base with MnDOT on Friday. I expected another phone call, and I'll follow up with them again. But when talking to MnDOT, this would not be a permitted use by them. Like sometimes when we have a parade and we get a permit for the closure of the bridge, since they'd be considered a vehicle, they would have to follow the rules of the road, and so it would not be a permitted use by them. And as long as they followed the rules of the road, that's how, they just would be seen as a vehicle. Like I said, I am going to follow up just to make sure there wasn't any other comments that they had, but that is what I have at this time.
So to do an ordinance, what is our timelines for that then again?
So timelines for an ordinance, they cannot be read at special meetings. So it would have to be, if something could be ready for next week, it would be May 16th, June 6th, and then it would have to be published in the paper. So it's, kind of 2 weeks in between, except there's a 5th Tuesday in May, so that will push things out a little bit. If an ordinance could not be drafted in time, then it would be, the first reading would probably be June 6th. So then by mid to end of June, we could have an ordinance in place.
Ron, I guess your thought process on to do an ordinance, would you look at what Minneapolis has and then look at maybe is it going to be different that we have to deal with North Dakota side? Or there's totally 2 separate deals because of the state lines?
Well, we wouldn't be dealing with the North Dakota side. They would have to deal with their own issues. I was going to reach out to Dan Gosta just to discuss it with him briefly to see what they were going to be doing. I would suggest that we do something similar to Minneapolis, and it would be revised. You would have to approve of the route. So the route that has been presented, I don't know, there hasn't been any discussion on it, but however you wanted to do it, you'd approve routes or at least what couldn't be utilized as a route. I was going to reach out to the Greenway Committee out there to find out, because since it's considered a bike as opposed to, a motorized vehicle, whether or not they're considering using it on the Greenway, I don't know. But to find out if that would be something that would be a violation, because there isn't really anything controlling it right now, because it's similar to a bike. It's called a multi-person bike, I guess, in most of the ordinances that I've seen. Then the only other question that I would have, I guess, is storage. Where is the plan on storage? And then in the materials that you had, I noticed that it indicated that you needed to have two, so I didn't know if you were having two and where you...
Just one.
Okay. Yeah, because the only reason I was saying that is if you look at the franchise materials that you provided.
Yeah, we got that adapter, or a switch for the market up here.
So that would just be the questions, but other than that, it's entirely up to, this group, and I can work with anything that's there, and I can bring forward a proposal. Tuesday's pushing it, I'll see what I can do.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Dale?
Thank you. I would be concerned, and Ron, maybe you can help on this. I would be concerned about, I don't know, what is Minnesota as far as the open container law concern thing.
What I saw, and it was very hard to find, to be honest with you, is Minnesota did similar to what North Dakota just did. And what they did was they basically said if you're on a multi-person bike, we'll just call it, that has to have 5 seats, it's not considered an open container if you have an operator. So there isn't actually it's not considered an open container because they allow the usage. So we wouldn't have any problems there and then if the operator was doing it, that would be a violation, of the law, open container, drink and drive, those types of things, so.
The other question I would have would be, that if we was to do this, I would like to see in the ordinance or something, someplace or somewhere where if this thing isn't working out to our standards and there's a lot of trash getting thrown around and things like that, that we could end the whole thing. We'd have the right to cut it off if there's things like that going on. I don't know I know it looks like, is that a garbage can that they have on the front there? Is that what that is? Yep. I'm assuming. And I would guess that I think you guys would be smart enough and good enough that you would make sure that, the people didn't just throw their beer cans out on the street, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying that I would like to have some kind of provision in there that if things like that were going on, that we could.
The only problem I would have with that would be just in pinpointing where something like that would be coming from. Anybody could start throwing trash and saying, well, that's where it's coming from. And then if enough of it goes around, well, then, okay, we're going to shut you down. That would be kind of the only issue I would have with the way you stated that.
I understand that, but I guess if we have, if we got the route that's set up and we start seeing a lot of it on that route, then we can probably just about guess where it was coming from.
Yeah, and I think your ordinance is going to have different things that potentially are considered violations, and then if there's violations, a certain amount of violations, then there's revocation of a license because it's set up on a license through the city, not through the state.
Anything else, sir?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Riepel?
I see we have an annual inspection. Who's going to be doing the annual inspection?
The franchise would be doing it.
franchise it?
Yep.
So we don't have to have our own person come in and inspect?
Not that we
No,
know of.
yeah.
That's more of just to make sure the bike is
Because that would
running.
be an additional cost to us.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I guess the easiest way to look at it, since it is so new, what we've been, when we were dealing with Cory Mock on the North Dakota side was, in essence, it's a bike meets an electric vehicle of sorts and multi-passenger. So the easiest way that we were told to explain it was think of a limousine or a party bus. You have a driver who's in charge of the vehicle, for lack of a better term, and you have passengers. So, that we would ask just to be treated like a vehicle of that nature would be treated.
Hours of operation are 10 to 10, according to what it said here in the ordinance that I saw. Is that what you're
Minneapolis one?
planning on?
That
It would vary
Vary.
during the day, yeah.
depending on
I
business.
mean, I don't want it.
It's not gonna run constantly,
2 o'clock in the
no.
morning,
No,
1 o'clock in the
no,
morning.
Ben?
Thank you. I think for the ordinance, I'd like to see what roads we can and cannot journey on. I think that'd be a better option than having like a defined route. Because if, say they want to change route in the future, then we have to go back and modify the ordinance. But if we have just specific roads that we are permitted on, then I feel like that's a little bit easier for the future.
That'd probably come in handy, especially if something's under construction too. I don't know if Third was on the list for Grand Forks side, but I know that's going to be close, so, I mean, anybody else have anything? Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I've participated in these before in other cities. They're a lot of fun. The bike goes pretty slow, so we'll have to be careful, especially on Demers, that you've got the proper, I don't know if it's an orange triangle or whatever it is. I was surprised by how slow the bike actually goes, even when everyone's pedaling, or maybe that was just my group. But I think it's a really fun concept. Yeah, we're having a good time. I think it's a great concept. It's going to bring people downtown, gives people a reason to not go to the lake and stay in East Grand Forks for the weekend. So as long as we get this ordinance written really carefully and everyone is really clear on the rules, I think this will be a good project. So thanks.
Else have anything? Mr. Emery?
Something, and I don't know if it would matter at all, but maybe just one thing we'd have to check out is Demers Avenue is on our state aid system with MnDOT having jurisdiction over that, so just to make sure, was that mentioned?
Well, from what I understood, Megan had a brief conversation with MnDOT, and as long as it's a multi-passenger bike, that's approved for road, since it's a bike, that they're not going to control the bridge, so.
But we've reached out to, and I think North Dakota side said they were going to as well, so.
So I guess the direction is to have an ordinance put together by Mr. Gallstead. Is there, I know that Mr. Pochvinsky mentioned roads. Is there something that, Justin and Tyler, that you want to work with the admin office? So did certain roads that you guys know you guys are going to go on, and certain roads that maybe you want to go on, that maybe alternates?
The route that we submitted was kind of the ideal route. We didn't really have too many alternatives per se. I guess if construction did come up, I'd maybe taken a look at that point. But no, I guess we didn't really.
Especially on the East Grand
Could
side.
it-
On the East Grand Forks, I think that would be more geared towards the Grand Forks side.
Right. Is there anything with the ordinance that we can not even designate the road? And just say that approved?
Well, I think I would designate a route or roads. I mean, you could limit it to the commercial district. I think most of the issues that you ever have with these types of party bus vehicles, pedal pubs, is noise complaints in residential neighborhoods. And so if we limited most of it as to their route into our commercial district, I don't think we would have those issues. And then, obviously, it could always be expanded, so to speak, I guess, if necessary. But that would be my thought, rather than trying to eliminate, every residential, well, I'm just addressing Mr.
Yeah,
Paczynski. So I get where you're coming from. I just think if we limit it to the commercial area and the commercial district is defined and everything else is restricted at this point, I think we're fine.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to just limit it to the commercial district. I don't know if we necessarily need to list, every single road that they can and cannot travel on. But I do see a potential need in the future to expand beyond your just set route, even just in East Grand Forks. And for us to not have Mr. Galsted go back and have to adjust the ordinance, and then we have to reread it again. I just think it'd be simpler to have it be a little bit more vague than, one concrete route.
And it would stay, realistically, the franchise is the one laying the groundwork for what they suggest. And it is all kind of condensed to like a downtown urban area. We really would have no need to venture out anywhere that didn't have that urban setting, so.
Mr. Larson?
Yeah, just to maybe clarify something that came up there. Do you guys have any intention of taking this on the Greenway?
No.
No, okay, so that's very clear then.
Yep.
Okay, that's
It'd be
good.
a little difficult, I think, to do that.
Yeah, I think so too, but just so we're clear.
Well, I mean, we look at possibly having something for next Tuesday's meeting.
I'll see if I can. That's kind of a short turnaround for me. It's Tuesday already, and I've got 3 days, and I'm supposed to have stuff to her in one.
Wow, you just got the luck. You're in trouble now.
Might have some interns working right now, don't you? All right, does anybody else have any questions then? I think everybody's on board of making sure this goes forward. Timing is going to be the issue, though.
We were thinking
Yeah.
June 6th at the latest then, is that what it sounded like, just to clarify?
So if we're not able to get an ordinance for a first reading next week, the first reading would be June 6th. So then the second reading would be in 2 weeks, and then we would have to get it in the paper.
So once it's in the paper,
Then
it's
we're
good.
good.
So,
Yep,
ready?
Is that the Exponent?
yes.
Probably Exponent and Herald.
We just do
Just on
our
the
official
Exponent.
paper, and then we post it on our website.
All righty. Anything else, guys?
Nothing. Good.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Number 2, review bid results for the federal sub-target project.
Buy her on, have fun.
Am I up?
Okay.
Well, good evening, council. So we opened bids on the city's federal sub-target project last Thursday, May 4th. Going into the bid opening, we had basically 3 contractors that had, pulled the plans. So we were anticipating, 3 potential bids. We did receive only the 1 bid, which was from Op Construction. The bid for the total project, proposals 1 and 3 now, was $1,698,898.10, which was approximately 24% above my estimate. And looking at the overall bid tabulation, I did not see one area where they were significantly higher than me. It seemed like kind of throughout almost a majority of the bid items, they were higher than what I was at. So I think it's timing, I think, right now. I did talk to one of the contractors that had pulled plans, and he basically told me that just with their current workload, they had kind of opted not to bid it. So I think it's timing, and then just, where we're at right now, I think with the industry, just with inflated material costs, the demand for labor, I think just all of it, kind of a combination, is driving up costs. If you remember, so we bid it with 3 proposals. Again, proposal 1 was the intersection south of Highway 2 on 5th Avenue Northeast. Proposal 2 work was on 5th Avenue Northeast between 15th Street and 20th Street. And then proposal 3 was on Demers Avenue, essentially from Highway 2 over to 4th Street Northwest, so even right in front of City Hall here. So what I looked at right now is, again, just kind of our estimate of total project costs, just for discussion purposes, assumed, we awarded all 3 proposals. We would have a total project cost of $1,999,832. Of that, the funding breakdown, we'd have about $860,000, again, in the federal sub-target funds that you receive. $241,142 would come out of assessments, which was that 30% that we were looking at assessing for the work on proposal number 2. And then the remaining balance would come out of state aid allocation or state aid construction funds. I did today kind of go back to our spreadsheet, which I handed out to everyone, that we basically try to keep just so we have a good idea of where things are at. So again, if you look at that spreadsheet, we have a starting balance way over on the right side there, that $1,398,000. Again, put in the numbers for the federal project. We also have the Hawk system that we're going to do this year at Bagel and 13th for $351,000. We're utilizing this fund. Then in, the beginning of 2024, again, we'd get our typical annual allocation, that $353,395. And that, right now, this year was down about 8% of what we typically get. So I do anticipate that probably coming back up, but just to be real conservative, I just use that number all the way through there. 2024, we'll have the traffic signal replacement on Demers Avenue and 4th. The cities will be responsible for approximately $200,000 there. The quiet zone, that's something I'm looking at because that's kind of, the scope of the work there is kind of expanded. As Jason and I looked at it, when we got that 2nd Avenue kind of closed down there for the work we needed to do with the quiet zone, there is a lot of bad concrete panels, curb and gutter in that area. So the scope of that project is kind of growing, so I think we may want to have the ability to pull some state aid funds for that project too. So right now I threw in about $100,000 for that project. Then right now, 2025, 2026, don't have anything necessarily slated. So again, we would just, get our annual allocation. Then again, in 2026, we'll have our federal project again. Right now, I just estimated about a $1.8 million project. I don't remember exactly when it started, but our federal sub-target funds of what we're going to receive has increased from that $860,000 up to about $1.2 million. So I think to come up to 1.8, I just took, it's an 80-20 split. So, to get the full 1.2 million, we'd have to have about a $1.8 million project. So again, with that balance then coming out of the municipal state aid funds. And then what we're going to talk about actually on the next agenda item, right now I just anticipated roughly in about 2028, we may be looking at a traffic signal replacement project down on 3rd Avenue and 1st Street. Put $450,000 in there for that. I figured about 3/4 of that project cost we'd be able to use state aid allocation funds because 3 of the 4 legs are on our state aid system. So Again, nothing in 2029 anticipated, we just get our annual allocation. And then in 2030, we get our annual allocation, plus we'd have a federal project again in 2030. So I guess what I was just trying to show you with this exercise is that we do have, with all of the, anticipated projects, we do maintain a positive balance, I guess. So kind of what I want to show you on that. So I think, right now, excuse me, I think we got some options. The federal funds that we are receiving have been authorized or approved for this project. So I think they are good for like 4 years. So I think, our options right now are, we could reject the project and rebid it at a later date. We could award any combination of the 3 proposals, or, we could award the entire project. So I think that's, kind of where we're at. Again, like I said in there, right now, the bid information has all been sent down to the Office of Civil Rights. It's kind of currently being reviewed by them. Until we get, their approval, we would not be able to award the project. So I'm hoping maybe we would still get approval yet this week. And then if we wanted to award something next week, we could potentially do that. But we do need that clearance from Office of Civil Rights. So I think with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Questions? So let's say if we rejected them, what would our timeline be? And you indicated that even if, let's say we waited till this winter to bid them out, we're not going to lose this money.
So the only thing I do have to find out is, once the funds have been allocated, you have so long to start drawing these funds or whatever. So let's say that period, I got to find out what that is. If that's a 6-month period, it may be a case where we would have to bid it even this summer. We would change our completion dates where, if we get a contractor that could do a little bit of the work this year, great, he could start, but we'd have the flexibility that if they didn't or couldn't start till next year, they'd have the ability to do all the work next year. But if we have to draw down some of those funds within a certain time frame, we may have to, get it bid and then, get things in place, and, maybe we can make a draw for mobilization or their bonding or something just to start utilizing funds. So that's something I would have to get a clarification on.
I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind too is that, we've met with, Chris Sugar, I guess, that aspect of it and changing everything, making sure that we're okay with harvest is one of the things. I know that you met Mr. Larson.
Yep, and I did have that in there. We had, so that's the intersection right on the south side of
Right.
Highway 2. Yeah, that work we do need to have completed by September 15th is kind of the agreement we had with American Crystal. If we're going to do the work this year.
Paul, did you have something?
You hit exactly what I was thinking.
I guess what are the wishes of comments from anybody or questions from people? Mr. Larson?
Mr. Emery, I know you can't answer this, without a crystal ball, but, what are your thoughts if we rejected this and put it out to bid? Do you think we get additional numbers and a little bit lower price like we did on the Hawk signal? Or are we setting ourselves up for some frustration with higher numbers next year?
My professional opinion is I think we would see better numbers just in my discussions with the contractors. They are busy at this time, so weren't necessarily, looking for work. Because the one contractor I did speak to, that's what he kind of said is, they had a lot of work on their plate. He looked at it. If they were going to go after it, his numbers were going to be higher. And he said he kind of compared where thought he was going to be at compared to where my estimate was, and then just kind of decided not to even bother. So I definitely think, are my numbers maybe a little light? I think so probably, but, I would, my guess would be, I would think if we rebid it, maybe we would see, a 10% savings from, maybe where we're at right now, would be my best guess.
Anybody else have any questions? Want to just move it on to next week and then vote on it, or what do you want to do? To reject, or do you want to look at rebidding it?
Thing is, and I can get some of these questions answered, I can update the RCA for next week, but again, the biggest thing is going to be that getting the authorization from the Office of Civil Rights, because we
Right.
cannot award it until that time.
Can we reject it, though?
We could reject it.
I'm just asking, Mr. Larson.
With only one bid, do we have an option to negotiate a price with the bidder to do the work next year at a better price?
That, I don't know, that would get messy. I would, without Ron here, I guess my recommendation now wasn't something like that, would be just rebid it.
Not a typical arrangement then?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
I think if you were, if there's a small project and we were just looking at quotes, maybe you got that flexibility, but I think with the federal funding, with, I don't think that'd be illegal. Yeah.
I guess the question that I have, let's say that we reject him and we get bids later, I would like to have cemented in the timelines that, if we approve it at this time, we are okay to start the construction next May and start using that money, and not all of a sudden we find out, well, we have to use it by March.
Right.
And then we're screwed,
And that's a big discussion we'll have with our district state engineer, just tell them, that's one of the options we're considering, and we need to know that time frame of when we'd have to start requesting that funding.
And what approval do we have to have done by a certain time? Let's say, well, you guys can do that, but by December 15th, you guys have to award something. Yeah, I'm just throwing dates out as an example.
I would just like to state that with FTA dollars, once it's appropriated to a specific project, you don't have to draw down because it's already been allocated to that specific project. The only time there would be a concern is if you switched projects, in which case then you would have to go through the appropriation process again. But like with our Safe Kids and our Safe Roads to School, which are also federal funded projects, we don't necessarily have to draw down right away. We just have to.
We do get bugged by the feds quite a bit, though, for
We do, but.
because they haven't been active.
Right. They
So I
haven't
think
been
that's
acted,
yeah.
but those are awarded, like you receive the grant for the Safe Kids like 2 years in advance of when the funds are awarded. So that's why they bug you more. You still have the 4 years, but it's already been allocated years before that. So I would think that you wouldn't have to draw down.
In my discussion with our district engineer, he kind of questioned that a little bit, so that's why we just need probably to reach out to the feds and just make sure we have a definitive answer. Hopefully you're right.
I would say my money's on no, because the FTA is harder than federal highway, but.
Nancy says no, we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just tell him Nancy said no.
Okay.
So,
Anybody else have any questions? You done, sir? All right. Number 3, discussion on left turn signal at 3rd and 1st. Mr. Emery.
Thank you again, Mr. President. So at, I guess, the request of the mayor, we can use his name being he's not here, but he had asked about the possibility of adding a left turn signal at the intersection of 3rd Avenue and 1st Street. So I've been working with Todd Grabansky, Water and Light, and then Trent Lauterbach with MnDOT just to, kind of determine if a left turn signal could be added. With their assistance, it was determined that, you would be able to add that. It's going to, like anything else, it's going to take some work there. So Trent had actually even kind of helped us out, and he went out and got quotes essentially from Strata Corporation and then Parsons Electric. I was hoping to have a little more formal quote package for you versus just an email, but I guess this is what we're going to get. So essentially, to add a left turn signal, I think Strata was the low bid in the amount of about $14,000. The one thing we just got to keep in mind is that traffic signal over there is about 25 years old, and MnDOT's saying, typical lifespan is in that 30-year time frame. So, like they said, we might get 35 years out of it too, but we're probably in that 5 to 10-year time frame, before that traffic signal is going to have to be replaced. And again, that's kind of why I included that in this spreadsheet. So I guess with that, just looking for, any questions you have, and, see if you're interested, I guess, in moving forward with adding a left turn signal at that intersection.
I think it's probably something to be welcomed for a lot of citizens. But
I know during the rush hour, it really gets backed up there. So.
do you have any questions or comments on it?
Funds for that would come out of our state aid maintenance funds.
Ben?
I know in canvassing the neighborhood last fall, it would be supported by the south end of town. That turning left there, I think creating the left-hand turn would create a gap in the traffic that's flowing there in the mornings, which would allow the people that need to make that left-hand turn onto Bigland, give them a little bit safer path to get onto that road. So I'd totally be for it.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Just one.
Mr. Larson.
Do we need to look at the kind of the traffic impacts on the other side? If I'm thinking about this right, this would back up traffic on the Louis Murray Bridge, and then we've got the railroad tracks there. Is there any sort of assessment that we need to do there that we're not, with the signal timing, that we're not typically backing up past the railroad tracks and creating a condition that we don't want? Am I?
By Luigi's, right there.
That's a long ways back.
That's a long ways back, yeah. I don't anticipate that it would have any negative effect there.
Sure. And then do we use the existing signal cabinet and just do modifications, or is there like a whole new?
Nope,
cabinet?
they're able to utilize the existing signal cabinet, I believe.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I echo what Ben said. I've heard that from a number of neighbors, like just add the arrow, it would help. And I think it's in the Bigland Road study too, is one of the first things that they at Alliant Engineering recommended. So kind of nice to start chipping away at that.
Anybody else have anything? See none, sir.
Thank you.
Number 4, consider request for Station 2 facility assessment. Chief Bushy.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Council. So tonight, I'm asking you to consider a Station 2 facility assessment. This would be the first step towards a renovation at Station 2. A little bit of a background on Station 2. It was built in 1977. The last major remodel on it was flood-related in 1997. And it's outdated. It is time to do a renovation on that station. The renovation I'm thinking about would be building systems, lighting, paint, ceiling, plumbing, kitchen, appliances, and more importantly, gender equality. That station is not set up for gender equality at the moment. And it's not a matter of if, it's when we hire a female. So in that, the reason for this assessment, so I'd have some numbers for capital improvement planning and also have technical assistance on everything in the building. If we want to do this, I really feel it's important that we do it right. And that's why I would like some outside help with it. So with that, any questions for me?
Do you have any questions for the chief? Mr. Bitter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did go over and tour the fire station with Chief Bushy today. I was concerned that the spending $10,000 to tell us you need to have a bathroom here, you need to have a bathroom there, and walking through it, and Chief Bushy and I kind of said, that'd be a good place for a bathroom. I don't know that we need to have someone make that assessment for us. I think we could go in there with a master plumber and say, we want to put a bathroom in here, is it doable? And the plumber would be able to tell us, yep, you can do it, nope, you can't do it. The chief and I talked about a number of things that the fire department wants to see in that building. We also talked about, would it be better in view of a south end bridge going in, would we be better off taking that money and spending it on a new facility farther south to accommodate future growth going south? Chief Bushy thought that the current station would probably be good for, if we did these updates for another 20 or 30 years, but did see a need down the line, 30 years, 25, 30 years of having a new station built farther south, depending on how we expanded. I just can't see spending $10,000. I'd rather put that into something else. Chief talked about lighting. He's already visited with one of the contractors in town about putting LEDs in the fire hall, and 10,000 between what water and light would give us back for putting in LEDs, and using this 10,000 we could have LED lights in the building, one step closer to where we want to be anyway. I just think that we just need to get a general or a plumber there, an electrician there, and your framing guys, and so say, this is what we're thinking of doing, what's it going to cost us, and go from there and save the $10,000 for the actual construction. That's where I'm at.
Anybody else have any comments or questions for Chief? Did you want to address anything with that?
Yeah, I agree with Clarence to a point. When I first seen the first proposal come in, I thought, wow. But then when the second proposal came in at the same price, that made me think that must be where the market is for this. And again, my goal is to do this right and make sure we don't miss anything in doing it. So I'm going to leave that as my request.
Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I've not visited the station and taken the tour. I'd like to set that up, but from what I understand, the scope of this project most likely will require an architect when we go to do the renovations. And as part of the architect's services, there would be an initial code study, which would incorporate a lot of the things that are picked up in this assessment. And so we're going to have to pay for this effort in some capacity at some point in this project. We could do it now, or we could do it down the road when we fund an actual project. But to meet building code and all of the requirements with ADA as well as gender equality, I think certainly this assessment's going to have to be done at some point, either now or slightly down the road.
Anybody else have any questions? See none, we're moving on till next week.
Thank you.
Betzer. Number 5, consider senior center rooftop unit replacement.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. The senior center HVAC project in front of you tonight is one that has been on the budget for a couple of years now. It was on last year's budget in the building maintenance fund, and we bumped it back to this year to give it more review. The prices were high and getting higher, and we hope that waiting another year would help stabilize those things a little bit. In that regard, it hasn't. That we budgeted $97,500 this year for this project, and the price has risen to $120,000. A couple of reasons for that, the price increase. In working through this project proposal and trying to understand everything that it entails and why the price is as high as it is, number one. Number two, trying to understand why the contractor is suggesting the changes that need to be made as it relates to ASHRAE codes and air quality and the commercial kitchen element of the senior center. We've taken a little deeper look at it and had a structural review done on the building. The price proposal I had at the time last year included a line item for structural for the rooftops to be placed, but it hadn't had an engineer's review done. That has been done now, and we found that it needed more structural work than what was included in the original bid. So that's one reason for the price increase. Touching on the project itself, I've had a few other local contractors come by and review it with me as well. And when it comes down to it, this proposal from Johnson Controls, my feeling is this is a turnkey project that they're proposing through the Sourcewell purchasing agreement, which covers our bidding requirements for quotes. I believe that their proposal with everything included, kind of as the general contractor on the project, is the best project for us to move forward with, specifically relating to the fact that we're operating a commercial kitchen out of the senior center. Other contractors had different ideas for how to maybe control the costs a little bit. Johnson Controls certainly did as well. I think if the commercial kitchen wasn't in place at the senior center, we could safely bring this price down by a third, maybe more. But in light of the fact that the kitchen is there and operating for the meal service that we have, and the requirements for fresh air return and the code standards that need to be met if we're going to do a project, I think this is the best one for us to move forward with. So that's my recommendation as it stands today, is to move forward with this project to get done. Talking about the funding a little bit, I mentioned the budget. We did include last week, you recall at the council meeting, we showed the building maintenance fund does have the $120,000 needed in it to be able to fund the project. Since last week, Ms. Anderson and I have visited a little further about other funding. The one fund that I think I would recommend we would use funds for to do this instead of building maintenance is the city does still have ARPA dollars that we've kind of just been sitting on, waiting to use, American Rescue Plan dollars. That we've been sitting kind of waiting to use for these recreation projects, and a little bit waiting to see what would happen with our sales tax proposal in determining how best to use those dollars. They do have a deadline to be used. Carla, I don't recall exactly what it is. It's a couple of years away still, so we're not like we're completely under a time crunch. But this project, especially with the air quality improvements, would certainly meet the requirements of the American Rescue Plan use. And if we use those funds instead of building maintenance, it would leave that $120,000 in the building maintenance fund to be used for other city projects and building repairs that we may have, and certainly could be applied to the recreation projects whenever that time would come. So that would be my recommendation if we move forward, is to use ARPA funds for that. The last note on the ARPA funds, there's roughly $650,000-ish, I think was the last time Carla gave me an update on what's available there.
Any questions for Reed? Mr. Riepel?
Commercial part of that kitchen is mainly used for LSS, right?
It is. It's Lutheran Social Services operates the kitchen, makes the food. The agreement we have in place with them is the city is responsible to provide the venue to cook the food and responsible for building maintenance, the maintenance of the building itself. Any little kitchen equipment that's inside of it is Lutheran Social Services. They own the oven, for example, and it's their responsibility to maintain the oven. But the building itself is our responsibility.
That's where I was going with that. I wanted to make sure that we couldn't charge them back for that 35%.
That hasn't been addressed with them. Sorry to jump back in. We haven't requested that. I mentioned it at our finance meeting, the last one we held a week or so ago. I have heard that other local communities that have LSS meal agreements in place have kind of adapted their agreements or reopened their agreements to include a price per meal out the door payback to the host site. In our case, the senior center. It's not a lot. It's like, from what I've heard, it's 10 cents a meal out the door that LSS pays to the host to try to cover some of those utility costs. We haven't reopened our agreement. Our agreement is we could reopen it at the end of this year to have that discussion with them. As an idea, last year we sent 17,000 meals out the door. So that would be a little bit of money back. It wouldn't certainly make up that difference, but it would be some back.
Mr. Better?
Thank you. If we happen to sell this building next year, would we recoup any of those costs, do you think?
If that question is directed towards me, I have no idea. I guess my feeling it would depend on who's buying it. I don't know.
I get, the big question would be, right now as it sits, would someone who's coming in there require us to update that stuff anyway, I guess is my question.
Buying it to tear it down and do something completely different.
You got in mind? Maybe you need something to do.
Just, I mean, that's one of the things we're considering with
Right.
the finance committee is selling that building. So if we put 120 in, is it more saleable or do we lose that money anyway?
You're not going to get 100% back on it, but you are going to get some benefit of doing that. Is it 75%? Is it 80%? You know, it's tough to say, you know.
If they want to keep the building.
Right. Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I guess I had a similar comment kind of prepared to Mr. Vetter. I'd prefer to hear back from the Finance Committee on the long-term recommendations for operationally budgeting for the senior center in this location before we make this decision. And so I don't know how long we can sit on this, Reed, but I would be a no now. It would take a lot of direction from the Finance Committee on next steps for the building.
Anybody else have any questions? Comments? How good is long is your quotes good for?
Typically, they're good for 30 days from when they send them out, so that would be May 25th. You know, it's
Sourcewell, so I just...
yeah. You know, there's always that chance that the price will keep going up, but to me, if that's the direction, I don't have any issue with continuing down this path of having these finance meetings and discussing the full project. Sorry, just to finish my thought, you know, we've been kind of sitting on and waiting for this project for 3 years already, so it's a few more months to make sure we're making a really solid, informed decision.
Ms. Peterson?
So then, do you have any time frame, like from LSS, in regards to when it has to be fixed? Or who's pushing it? Are we pushing it? Are they pushing it? Is it a job concern?
We are pushing it. If there's anybody pushing it, it's we are. LSS hasn't come to us with a concern or an issue over the quality of the HVAC system that's there. The issue arose, there's basically 2 residential size air conditioners there. One of the 2 air conditioners is shot and needs to be replaced. And when we started looking at the system and how it cools, how much air gets forced through the vents, the fact that the kitchen in the summertime is 85 degrees at its coolest all the time when the ovens are on. We just started looking at this, and when I say 3 years, I'm sure maybe 2019 we started talking about it that if we're going to put money into the system, let's do it right. But it's at our direction at this point.
Anybody else have anything?
Yep.
I think so. I think that's what everybody's nodding, rattling. Number 6 is request direction on special assessments. I'm good with that.
Okay, I was notified last week from the county that the Postal Service, we did a project in 2015. They received end benefit from Third. They had paid the first 3 years and then quit paying as of 2019. When the county reached out, they were notified by the attorney of the Postal Service that the Postal Service is not required to pay special assessments unless directed by Congress, which is why apparently they quit. So in order to handle the paperwork, we can't just write that off. I would have to have a resolution from the city council saying that this is a debt that's uncollectible. So if you have questions, let me know, but otherwise what the plan would be is drafting a resolution, bringing it before you next week, and then once, if and when that is approved, share it with the county so then they can address it on their end as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. are they gonna say we have to pay them back for what they've already paid?
They have not asked for payment back.
Okay.
And I did get the information from the county with all the, I mean, it's just a couple $100. The county numbers are a little bit more because they have penalties and interest added on there. But what we would do would just use our figures, but no, they're not asking for payment back.
Yeah, I think we just write it off, but I guess if we weren't supposed to collect it at all, my question is will they come after us for the $209.94 or whatever it is they paid?
They haven't as of this point.
I would say, well, if Congress doesn't make us, we don't have to.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Megan? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Vetter.
Second.
Second by Larson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned.
Everyone's got a good sense of humor about that.